Hey, adventure riders. My name's Mark from Kytheramoto, and welcome to another topic for adventure motorcycle riding. And what we do here is we try to help your adventures be a little more comfortable, a little less hazardous, and definitely safer. So we bring up different topics, and our tonight's topic is going to be hypothermia. Little story behind this. I was actually watching Itchy Boots this morning, and she is in Mongolia. And I don't watch a lot of them, but today I decided to watch one this morning in between soccer games. Anyway, she was up on this plateau, probably around 10,000 feet or whatever. And she was definitely hitting a cold wind and kept complaining about how cold it was. And she ended up smartly pulling over and grabbing some food because she started to feel sick. And you could tell, you could look, and you could tell on her face that she was cold. And I will give you my thoughts anyway. I think she was starting to become mildly hypothermic. And she grabbed something to eat, she grabbed something to drink. She put on a raincoat, which was an excellent idea because she doesn't have any a windshield on her motorcycle to speak of. And so she was getting that wind right on her coat. And so she put her raincoat on as a windbreaker. And she was able to make it to the next town, I think 75 kilometers or something like that. So I decided I knew I was going to do this video for hypothermia anyway, coming from a mountaineering background. And so I wanted to present this to you guys this evening. So we're going to talk about preventing, recognizing, and understanding hypothermia for the adventure motorcyclist. And I'm not talking about just like getting cold fingertips and things like that, but really getting hypothermic because because if you're anything like me at all, right, we tend to try to power through things. But if you're becoming slowly hypothermic, there's some things that you should be aware of when your internal body temperature drops below normal, which is 98.6. So what is hypothermia? Well, hypothermia is a decrease in core body temperature secondary to the body's inability to create enough heat to replace the loss, right? Which makes sense, right? So your body's a really, really good furnace, right? It will produce a lot of heat if you're exercising, if you're eating well. It doesn't matter really what the temperature is out. You know, if you're working hard and you're producing heat by activity, you know, you can produce all sorts of heat and you could be warm in 10-degree weather in a t-shirt essentially. So as long as you continue to maintain that body heat production. So hypothermia is really characterized in two levels. And we're not going to get into super good big detail on any of it except for the minor levels, right? So let's get into that, right? So the different levels of hypothermia. We're going to talk in core temperature in Fahrenheit, right? So mild hypothermia or minor hypothermia, anywhere between 98 degrees and 95 degrees, and we're talking about your core temperature. And all right, well, how are we going to determine that? Well, usually it's done rectally, right? It's done with a rectal thermometer. We can get skin thermometers as well that can be semi accurate, but we're not talking about that sort of stuff. We're not talking about, you know, if you've got a fever, you're hypothermic due to a pathological type of thing, or you're sick or something like going on with that. But we're talking about you recognizing in yourself or someone else that you might be becoming or they might be becoming hypothermic. So at 98 to 95 degrees, your internal core temperature starts to drop a few degrees. You get chilled sensation and decreased muscle performance in the hands. Why is that important? Because we are riding motorcycles, right? And I don't need to tell you that you need to have muscle performance in your hands for clutch and throttle and all that sort of stuff. And you guys know all about that. But that's a first thing to go, right? Your first thing is really you start to degrade your ability to use your extremities. And you start to shiver uncontrollably and you start to lose coordination of your extremities. So 95 degrees to 93 degrees is really a pronounced incoordination, right? So you really start to get the what they call as the umbles, right? The fumbles and stumbles and things like that, where your core temperature is dropped at this point by roughly 6 degrees. So pronounced incoordination, weakness, stumbling, and mild confusion. You start to not really be in the ball game, right? So this is when your body temperature should never get below this if you're riding a motorcycle. If you start to get cold and you start to get chilled and you start to feel like you're really battling to stay warm, you need to pull over, okay, and start warming yourself up. Whether you need to make a cup of coffee, grab some food, or walk up a hill somewhere, or replace that heat somehow, and go over all your clothing. And we're going to talk about that in another few slides. 93 to 90 degrees is gross incoordination, inability to use your hands, and mental sluggishness, right? So you can't ride a motorcycle at this point, right? You're way too cold. You have reduced your internal core temperature by so much that you are a danger on your motorcycle to yourself and others. I'll mention what severe hypothermia is, but we should never get to this point. It's below 90 degrees, shivering stops, you get severe incoordination, irrational behavior, you can go unconscious, your digits and your feet, things start to freeze, and it's all bad, right? It's all bad. So you never want to get to that point. So here's I will just give us a little summation here, is if you get cold, pull over and grab some clothes on, right? I mean, on a motorcycle, because you're dealing with one of the biggest factors in becoming hypothermic, and that's wind, right? So recognizing a hypothermic person, you might not recognize it yourself. You may be hypothermic, but you don't, you might be confused, a little bit confused. You don't understand. You might feel sick and everything, but you don't recognize it. It's probably because you're cold. I've been hypothermic twice, and both on mountaineering expeditions. And I didn't realize it until after I got in my sleeping bag and started warming up and go, oh, I was just, I thought I was getting the flu or something. You just feel sick, and you look sick and your skin is pale and you a little cyanotic, which is that blue lips, blue tips of your ears and nose and things. So you just act sick. Like they might say, I'm not really feeling well. I feel kind of nauseous. I don't feel like eating or drinking anything and stuff like that. Might have that sitting posture where you're trying to protect your core, and you're scrunched over and you're trying to save as much of that body heat as you can if you're taking a break. And if you see someone in your group kind of acting that way, make contact and start asking some questions. And you might say, look, I think you're getting really cold. Let's make some coffee or some soup or something, right? And you might be just shivering, uncontrollably. We've all been cold enough, like getting out of the pool or whatever, and then we're just like shivering, right? So that could be happening as well, because that's your body's response, and it's going to activate your muscles and try to produce some heat. Rider may appear to be underdressed for the cold, right? So evaluate. I mean, if you're cold and you've got every single layer on, you're super bundled up, and somebody's wearing a summer, ventilated jacket type of thing, and and they're not feeling good, they may be underdressed, and you guys might have to swap some gear, some clothing or something to try to get everybody to be warm enough. And then obviously somebody's complaining about being cold. I feel sick and something, but I'm just really cold. I feel cold. So preventing hypothermia, right? There's three things, right? Hydration. The key to Kytheramoto here is keep everybody hydrated. You got to hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Whether it's cocoa in this situation, coffee, which is not the greatest, because it's got caffeine, stuff like that for hydration, if you're drinking it for hydration, right? But we generally don't drink coffee for hydration. But we want to drink some with fluid with electrolytes. It could be any fluid, fruit juice, things like that. But drink water, drink hot cocoa, something of that nature, and food, right? Hydration, food, and clothing. Food is you got to feed that furnace, right? You got to feed that furnace with proteins and stuff, and you got to eat, right? You may not feel like you're going to eat, you want to eat in cold weather, but you got to eat. You got to feed the furnace. So riding motorcycles, you are better to overdress in the cold weather than underdress, right? It's different from other sports, right? So if you're going on a hike and you're gonna climb up to a summit somewhere, in a hills or whatever, and it's 20 degrees out, you might want to just wear a very light, you're just about to start off, you're throwing your backpack on or whatever. You don't want to bundle up in your down coats and all that sort of stuff, because as soon as you get 50 feet up the trail, you're going to be producing so much heat that you're going to start stripping layers off, right? Because you want to stay dry in the cold weather. So, but in here on a motorcycle, you want to prepare and make sure that you have enough clothing to wear underneath your coat or whatever you have on, that will protect you from the wind and the cold, okay, from that day. It's obvious, right? But I mean, I've been, I've started out with not enough clothes on, and I would be going, God, I don't want to pull over. I don't want to pull over and add another layer and everything, but it will always get to the point where, okay, I'm going to pull over. I'm going to grab a coat, down coat or something underneath it, right? So you're better off overdressing than underdressing, because you might as well be comfortable, right? So once you begin the hypothermia process, right? Once you start getting cold and your core temperature starts to drop, it takes time to regain your internal body temperature to normal limits. It takes time. All right. It's just like hydration. If you get behind the dehydration curve, it takes time to rehydrate. And also, it takes time to build that body heat back up so you're comfortable. Now, you guys know your motorcycles. You know your windshield. You know how, to get heat from your motorcycle and things like that, and stay out of the wind, and close your vents in your helmet, and close your vent in your coats and things like that. So really take the time to be religious about it, right? I mean, really, for lack of a better term, just be very rigorous about how you set yourself up before you start to move forward, if you will. So in all backcountry stuff, whether you're doing mountain biking, mountaineering, adventure motorcycling, hiking, trekking, anything that you do, you have to protect yourself from the wind, the wet, the cold, and solar radiation, right? It's solar radiation is a benefit in cold weather for sure, and because infrared will heat you up, right? But when you're in the desert, right, and it's July and you're at 4,500 feet or whatever, and it's 90 to 100 degrees out, you got to protect yourself from getting heated up so much from the sun. So we put solar radiation in these four things. But as motorcyclists, we always have wind for the most part, depending on what we're doing and how fast we're going. Wet, if you travel or if you ride your motorcycle in wet weather, that the combination of wind and wet can definitely add to your potential of getting hypothermic. And the cold, it's a triple whammy when it's, you're riding a motorcycle, it's raining lightly in the morning, and it's 35 degrees out, and you've got to get to the next objective, right? So you really have to prepare yourself for that and be mindful and aware of yourself becoming hypothermic and your fellow riders as well. So hydration, like we talked about, keep your internal plumbing as close to 100% as possible. And so you can facilitate heat production and distribution to organs and extremities, right? Because you distribute heat throughout your body and the extremities, your fingers, and various things like that. So what do I mean by keeping your internal plumbing at close to 100%? That's not being dehydrated, right? So how do you know that? Well, light yellow color urine, you're urinating on a regular basis. You don't have that dark, orangey yellow urine when you urinate. So, and be mindful of that. And that you're just religiously drinking enough water where that you are hydrated. Underlying thing that it's the one thing you do if you want success in the backcountry, stay hydrated. Food, feed the furnace, right? Feed the furnace. Have a good breakfast. And if it's in the morning, obviously, or eat throughout the day, snacks, things like that, feed that furnace throughout the day. Create and maintain that body heat for proper food intake is vital. So whether it's snacks or jerky or things like that, try to stay away from high sugar stuff, and the fact that that's just used up so quick, but make a good combination of dietary for yourselves. And don't forget, in the cold weather, you have to eat. Clothing. We've already talked a lot about this, right? So prepare your ride with proper clothing. If your motorcycle doesn't have heated elements like heated grips and seat, you have to protect yourself. You have to create heat somehow to stay warm, right? So multiple layers. Do the layering, and at least I'm putting on a down coat, a down type coat, or other material that traps heat within its baffles, right? So you have baffles, and you know what I'm talking about, the lighter down coats. You put that under your riding coat, and that works great for me anyway. It's perfect for me. I'll put 2 or 3 different layers on, put that down coat underneath my riding jacket, and on cold days, I never get cold up here. Usually it's just my fingertips, and I'll add another layer of gloves for that. But that's more of a comfort thing, right? Assure that all the vents, including your wristbands, are closed. And so you're trying to keep that cold wind from getting underneath your jacket and then extracting some of that, your well-earned heat out of away from your body. So, and we're a neck gaiter, right? 19% of the heat comes out of your head, right? So you got a helmet on. My head never gets really cold when I have my helmet on. I have a vent on top. I have a Shoei or whatever, and that seems to work out pretty good. But I definitely wear a neck gaiter 99% of the time because you have blood vessels going up and down here trying to feed the cranium, if you will. And so you want to protect that. A lot of heat gets lost there. And I'm not one for definitely putting one over my face or whatever, but make sure that you wear a gaiter and cinch down everything. Underlying head gaiter beanie. Put a beanie on if you can get it under your helmet. I can't. I don't even know what you call it, but it's a very thin material that goes over my dome. So I use that in cold weather. And take proper breaks to warm up. I don't know, leave in the comments. Do we take enough breaks? I don't know. At least at my age, I certainly do. But if you get cold, take action, okay? That's the most important thing. Pull over, grab some food, grab some or something, warm up, do a little walk or whatever, and get back in. You don't have to spend an hour, but take a little bit of time and make sure you keep yourself heated up and warm and comfortable, because you have to be comfortable to concentrate, because you're riding a motorcycle. And it's nothing worse than sitting there and battling the cold and being cold and uncomfortable, and and then you're just not focusing on the right stuff, right? So just be mindful of that. So this was one of the best trips. I love riding in the cold myself. I think riding in the cold, especially at this time of year, is great because there's nobody out there. Most people don't like the cold. It's too cold. And but I love it. I think it's great. If I can get my bike through, obviously this snow is more of a delicate thing here. It's not like I'm plowing through anything, but anyway, it's the colder temperatures around 25 to 50 degrees is absolutely fine with me, right? So I love it. So anyways, thank you very much from Kytheramoto. I really appreciate it. My name is Mark. Like and subscribe, I guess, and I'm going to try to keep doing as many of these as I possibly can. But anyways, happy riding. I want you guys to be safe out there. You take care.